welcome to the Island Lamb, and I'm Diane, and this is episode 15, Block Island Winter, cozy winter rituals and cozy accessories. Well, let me first start off by wishing you all a happy 2023. I hope everyone moved into the new year with some peace and joy and comfort in their lives. One of the rituals that my husband and I have is we drive down to Crescent Beach on Block Island and we watch the polar plunge. Now, there were years when my husband participated, and one year it was 5 below, and I just can't believe he did that. Another year it was, I think it was like 40 degrees, but this year it was a mild year for the polar bears, and we watched the plunge, and then it was so nice out. It was in the mid 40s. We had no wind. We had beautiful sky, sun, and blue water, blue sky, and so we walked to the beach. And on our walk, we found some sea glass, and that sea glass inspired me to remember some of the pieces that I have in my house that I wanted to share with you. So we'll get back to sea glass in a little bit. I am wearing the Yohi Locatelli Seaside pullover, and I talked about this in a previous episode where I had it on the mannequin, but I hadn't worn it yet, and I've got a couple of photos that I'm including that show the pattern. It's a beautiful pattern. It's a slip stitch yoke. It's a top down. It's, stocking knit. It's in the round, and it's called Seacoast, as I mentioned, and I used our mill Northlight Fibers yarn called Seaside. And I just loved that whole idea of Seacoast, Seaside. And again, I'm walking the beach on New Year's Day and I'm picking up sea glass, and my husband and I are looking out at the blues. And I just remembered, this sweater that I had shown you, but I hadn't worn it yet, and some of the other items that I have in those beautiful sea glass colors. And when I look at this yarn, I do see, I see the beach. Some pebbles on the beach. I see some sea glass. I see white sand, the foam. So this is 50% Sapima cotton and 50% fine merino. It's beautiful to knit with. Now, the pattern was designed by Yohi for Brooklyn tweed. And the pattern was supposed to be made in Brooklyn Shelter. And I've used Brooklyn Shelter. You saw that in my Birch Bay sweater that I showed in a previous episode. And I do enjoy that yarn. But I had to use Seaside yarn to make the Seacoast sweater, and I'm really glad I did. Now, when you saw the photo of the pattern, you may have noticed that collar looks kind of loose. And I think that that is maybe a concern if you do decide to use the Brooklyn tweed shelter. Even in the pattern, it notes that if you knit a little bit loosely, that you might have to put a seam binding inside that collar. But as I mentioned in a previous episode, I have had no problem. This yarn has enough elasticity. It's, there's some short rows in the back. I don't feel like this is slipping off my shoulders at all. I think it's a perfect fit. Now, some of the unique things about this pattern, because it really is a basic pattern. However, it does have some short row shaping, and I do enjoy that. It's a long tail cast on, so nothing there that you have to worry about. And a viewer did ask me to please include the both needle sizes, the US and the European needle size, so I will do that. So you use a size 6 for the rib, which is a US 6 and a 4 millimeter. And the body is knit up in a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter. And I'm glad the viewer asked me to do that, because we are reaching, all different countries and knitters from all over the world. So it is important that I'm speaking your language as well as my language as much as I can. And I have noticed that a lot of the patterns I've been knitting recently haven't even given the US. It's in centimeters, it's in millimeters. So it's good that I'm learning that. I think that's really all I was going to say about this. Oh, I did want to tell you that the colorway for this yarn is called Cormorant Cove, and that is one of the coves on Block Island. So again, beach, seaside, sea glass, that's just what made me think of this. And I think that's what inspired me initially to make this sweater. So now I want to talk about what's on the mannequin. So, this is a store-bought coat, but it's the scarf that I want to talk about. Now, this is a Martin Storey pattern. He designed it for Rowan, and it's called the Windy Scarf. And I'm inserting some photos of the pattern here. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this. I found out about this pattern through Fruity Knitting. And if you go into YouTube and you just type in Fruity Knitting Windy Scarf Tutorial, It wasn't a specific episode, but it was a specific tutorial. And Andrea, I mean, she guides you through this whole row by row. So some of the things that you will learn. So the pattern didn't call for these little tassels. I added that later. I made one of these for my husband, which I'll show you in a bit, and I made it exactly the way the pattern recommends it. But this was all yarn that was in my stash, so I can't tell you what I used, but I can tell you when we get to my husband's, and it is the Rowan that was recommended in the pattern. But I just want to talk about the tutorial, and I want to talk about this pattern. So the tutorial is going to run you through it using a cable needle and then showing you how to turn these cables without a cable needle. And I had already been turning cables without a cable needle. I will use a cable needle if I'm on a slippery yarn, or if I just am really, really fine yarn, I want to keep track of them. But most of the time I'm comfortable without a cable needle, and especially in this pattern, I was fine without it, but it will give you the tutorial either way. The other thing that's very unique about this pattern is, and I'm going to take this off the mannequin so you can get a closer look. You do not see the cable work on the back. You only see it on the front. So you are, every other row, you are slipping the cable stitches. So it's almost like a type of mosaic yarn in that way. And that keeps those cables on the front. It keeps your wrong side row really easy. There's a couple of rows where you have a lot going on and you kind of really have to pay attention, but for the most part, you get the rhythm of this. I would definitely, I really am glad that I went through the tutorial and just got the hang of it first. There is one or two rows where I really have to look at the pattern. But otherwise, you know, you're just going and going. And I felt like I needed a little something extra. And that's why I put on those little tassels just to weigh it down for me. So, you know, you wear it any way you want it. But really, these tassels, I think, really made a difference. In my opinion, it made a difference. So I also made this for my husband. And I used the Rowan yarn. So the recommended yarn for this is the RowansPure Wool Superwash Worsted. And here it is, in kind of a more masculine look. Again, you almost see like a little diamond pattern back there, right? And of course, I did not put the tassels on. My husband is not a big, as you know, not a big knitwear, especially woolen items. But for some reason, he is really comfortable wearing this against his neck. Maybe because usually he has a turtleneck on in the winter. And he wears it all the time. And he's worn this 2 winters in a row. I made both of these last winter and they're in great shape. This yarn, this Rowan yarn, really holds up well. It's beautiful. And the stitch definition is great. And I think I did a pretty good job finding something in my stash that gave me a similar gauge. It is a little bit wider, but you know, with a scarf, it doesn't matter. So I'm glad that I was able to share these with you. And again, you know I love Martin Storey. I'm working on that lazurite cardigan. That's his pattern, the fisherman knit that I made my husband, Martin Storey. I'm looking forward to making another one of his too. So I can't say enough about Martin Storey. Okay, so going back to the sea glass moment, walking the beach and looking at the sea glass, my husband and I have been picking up pieces of sea glass for years, and we pick up little shells or a little piece of driftwood, and we have a bowl on our coffee table. And I'm showing you that right now. And if you see the colors in that bowl, those colors are what inspired me to make the absolutely fabulous throw by Colinette. And it was a kit. And I made this throw my first winter on Block Island. My first full winter on Block Island. So I moved here in January of '99 and just lived in a rental. And then that following year, so in 2000, we were in our home. And, you know, we had just come from North Carolina where we used to sing pretty much green all year long. I mean, it never really froze and we didn't have snow. And I'm from New England, I'm from Rhode Island. So, you know, I should have been prepared for it. But I think the first winter I was just a little like, wow, with all the gray and, you know, the gray landscape and the gray ocean and the no leaves on the trees. And I was just getting back into knitting and I just felt I need something to inspire my brain. I need to see some colors. And so even though this colorway for this kit is called Waterlily, to me it says also, you know, like Monet's water lily, but to me it also looked like sea glass too. So this is a beautiful, beautiful throw. And I keep it in my living room on the back of one of my wingback chairs. And you may have noticed it in that last episode I did at Christmas time with my mom when she came out for the visit. It looks beautiful there because our walls are pretty neutral and our woodwork is pretty neutral. And just this pop of, you know, Monet's watercolors. Now you're going to notice a lot of different fabrics going on. So we have a chenille. There's quite a few mohairs. There's a wool blend. There were, let's see, I have my notes here. There were 8 different yarns involved, and they came on huge hanks. And the directions told you exactly how to deal with these hanks so you wouldn't get all tangled. So untake the little string off and put that hank over your shoulder, and then wind it while it was over your shoulder. And so, you know, I had my desk up in the office, like up in my little studio like I do now, and I had 8 big hanks of these beautiful colors, and I just wound one at a time. I did not put it on my winder. I did as they recommended, and I just hand wound it while it was over my shoulder. And I had them all set up on my desk, and I labeled each one. A through H is actually how it worked out. And you cast on 123 stitches, so you cast on the entire width of it. You knit the first row, and then from there, you're basically just producing this scallop. You know, for anyone who's ever done a chevron, it's very similar. Some rows you've got, you know, I think it was like a purl 3 together in the middle of the chevron, and then you had a yarn over. And it told you exactly when to change from A to C or B, and there was no, to me it didn't seem like there was a rhyme or reason, but once it was finished, it definitely looked like Monet's watercolor, Waterlily painting. And then for me, again, it just reminded me of sea glass. So that is one of my favorite pieces in the house. It was, like I said, it was our first full winter in the house, and it sits on that chair. And sometimes I bring it into the living room. We had an overnight guest one time, and she ended up putting this on the bed and using it as just a little extra blanket. And I was like, oh, I hadn't even thought about draping that over the end of the bed. So it does come in several different styles and several different color combinations. And now there is one, and I spoke with a woman who made this one for a wedding gift, and I believe it was for her daughter, and she did the all off whites. I can just imagine she used the scallop pattern, she did all off whites, but I think I'm showing you a photo of all the different color combinations that you could get. And some, they're not all scallop, you know, I think there were some geometrics. So, you know, Colinette, I bought the kit. It's called the Absolutely Fabulous Throw. It has mohair, it has chenille, it has wool. Just an absolutely mind sense absorbing project. So that's what I have for you today. I did want to talk about some of our rituals, some of our winter rituals, and some of the things that we do here out on the island. This time of year, of course, we put away our Christmas ornaments, and we do that with joy and ease. And, you know, they're precious. You saw my ornaments. You saw my mom's ornaments. You know how old some of these ornaments are. They're precious. We have special boxes we put them away in. And so that's the beginning of, you know, we polar plunge. The next day we take down the tree. We put away the ornaments. And after I clear my my centerpiece off my dining room table, I like to throw a 1,000-piece puzzle on the table. Because for me, I just love getting up early in the morning while it's still dark, put on my coffee, maybe spend a half an hour in the dining room putting a few pieces in before I sit down to knit. So that's definitely a winter ritual for me. Another one is my husband and I love to watch football, and this is a great time of year to watch college. Last weekend was all the bowls. We watched all the college bowls, and this weekend is a wild card playoff for the NFL. Next weekend, this coming weekend, and then we've got the playoffs. So we enjoy that together, and I sit and knit during the whole entire game, so I usually get a lot accomplished. A great time for comfort food. I'm always thinking about making stews and soups, and we had a prime rib for for Christmas Eve, which we froze, and I am going to make a beef barley soup. Slow cooked meals that just perfume the house, and Another thing I like to do is really take good care of my plants this time of year. They've been a little bit neglected. It's all been about ornaments and Christmas trees. And so I take a look at my plants and see how the soil looks, and do the leaves need to be cleaned, and do they need a little food, and start to think about which plants I'm going to split this summer. My plants grow crazy in this house. I have a lot of natural light, so I'm constantly splitting them. And this year I want to gift some of them and just get them out of the house. And I have a fern that really needs its own room now. I am going to have to cut that probably into fourths. And if anybody has ever cut a fern, this is one of those big, I'm not even sure what the name of this type of fern is, but it's finicky. I've heard, I never had luck in a previous life, but since we moved to this house and we have all this natural light, and I've gotten it off the radiator and I missed it and I water it regularly, it's just exploded. So if anyone out there has had success dividing these ferns, I would be very interested to hear about that, because it's something I'm probably going to do in maybe April or May. I think I will split those plants. Another thing that we like to do this time of year, it's kind of a ritual for us, is find a new series, maybe on Netflix or on Hulu. And we have, and it's not that new, but it's new to us. And some good friends of ours kept telling us, how you're watching Yellowstone, you've got to check out Yellowstone. And now there's a prequel, and I think 2 prequels for Yellowstone. I love Kevin Costner, so we've started Yellowstone. And I don't know if you're watching it or not, but you're going to be in Montana, you're going to be on a cattle ranch. I will say there's quite a bit of violence, cowboys, and we've got Indian reservation land, we have ranchers, we have a lot going on. But when I was 16, I went on a 4-H exchange program, and I spent 2 weeks in Wyoming with a host family who lived on a ranch, and they had cattle and they had horses. And it brought back so many memories, good memories. I mean, none of the violence, but really good memories. And I was not a great horseback rider. My aunt had a horse, and I did learn the basics. And I spent 2 weeks on horseback, went to rodeos and went to dances. And it was just a wonderful time in my life. So there's a lot about Yellowstone that brought back some memories. Definitely the scenery, looking out at the beautiful snow-capped mountains in the horizon, and then pastures and bringing the cattle up and down. So, I'm going to say we're enjoying it. I'm not going to say I would recommend it, because I don't know how you feel about some of the violence. But anyway, that's one of our rituals, is to start a new series. And another, I mentioned this in a previous episode, one of the reasons I'm pushing off how many episodes I do is because it's a good time for us to go off island. We don't have any tourists. It's easy to get on and off the ferry. And so a lot of our family live in Rhode Island, and we had a wonderful visit with my husband's brother and his wife and our niece. So Tommy, Mickey, and Amy, if you're watching, thank you for such a wonderful afternoon. My sister-in-law is an amazing cook and baker, and she makes authentic anise flavored biscotti, and she's got a mocha pot, and she made us beautiful cappuccinos. And my niece Amy gave them a electric foam, to foam the milk for the cappuccinos. So we had beautifully authentic cappuccinos and biscottis, and sat at their kitchen table and talked. And it was a wonderful visit. So again, that's what one of our rituals this time of year is, just try to get out and visit some of our friends without all the hubbub of the tourists and the busyness of the summer season. So I hope I will 2 or 3 weeks from now give you another look into some of my accessories. I have lots of hats and shawls and things like that, and it also give me time to finish some of the projects that I've been working on. I did spend a good couple of hours this morning, and I'm almost finished completing the shawl collar on my Spark cardigan, and I am going to steek that. And I hope in my next episode I will include a video take of me steeking it. So that was my New Year's. I didn't make any resolutions other than I'm going to cut that sweater. So I hope you will join me a couple of weeks from now and follow me while I cut that up. And a viewer suggested to me that maybe I just pour myself a glass of wine or a nice stiff drink before I do it. I think I might do that after I do it. I don't think I want to do anything that might make me a little wiggly with my scissors. But so again, I wish you a wonderful week. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and thank you for joining me.